Hi, thanks for tuning in. I'm Josh Radtke, a product marketing manager at Google, and here we have Sherry Lynn and Soniya Jobanputra, who worked on the Pixel 3a as product managers. Pixel 3a is a phone we launched about a month ago, and it brings the best of Google hardware, software, and AI to a more affordable price point. Sherry, you worked on the software. Soniya worked on the hardware. And I think we have some stories to share today about what it took to launch the phone. So let's dive right in. So what was the team looking to accomplish with the Pixel 3a?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So Pixel 3a represents our next phase in trying to grow our Pixel portfolio to have devices at all sorts of price points for all sorts of consumers. We started Pixel in 2016. That was Pixel 1. And we set out with a really simple mission. And Josh, you'll remember this. It was build radically helpful experiences for consumers by leveraging the best of Google, because we have a lot of cool assets and specialties in software, hardware, and AI. So we wanted to combine all that and deliver something awesome. In 3 generations, I think we've done a good job of that. We've delivered some really innovative features. Features like call screening or walking navigation. Like, these are things that really help people on a day-to-day basis. So with Pixel 3a, what we wanted to accomplish was to take those exact same premium experiences and deliver them on $399 hardware. So really low-cost hardware. How we did that is we first actually defined the hardware. We were like, this is the price point we want. This is the hardware that kind of fits in that price point. And then we tasked the software team to take these premium experiences and find a way of pulling them onto commoditized low-cost hardware. I think the team did a pretty decent job of it. If you listen to the reviews, they've been pretty positive so far.
And why right now? Why launch the Pixel 3a now?
There's lots of reasons, frankly, but I think the 3 that stick out to me at least is the first one being market forces. Premium prices have gotten really high over the last little while, and it's not because these companies are trying to pull more profit out or anything like that. It's just we're putting more cool stuff in. So more cool hardware means higher prices. But what that also means is that some consumers get left behind. And we kind of saw this trend a year and a half, 2 years ago when we first set out on this project. And so we thought, let's build something for those users that are getting left behind, a premium experience that's a little bit more affordable. The second reason is we acquired a fantastic engineering team from Taiwan. About a year and a bit ago, we acquired a huge software and hardware team from HTC in Taiwan, and that's the exact team that worked on Pixel 3a. So we had the benefit of resources to support launching more phones in a year. The final one is time. We needed time to learn about the industry. We needed time to learn about how to build a phone and ship a phone all on our own. And we needed time to learn about our consumers so we could make the right trade-off decisions to hit $399. It's not easy to hit $399 and still deliver our experiences, as we know. And so it was really important that when we made trade-off decisions, that we made sure that we focused on the experiences that mattered to those users, and we delivered those experiences holistically without compromise.
So how did you figure out who those users were going to be and what they prioritized?
Well, I'll take that.
Yeah.
For us, it is a whole process of trying to understand who our Pixel 3a users would be. There are quantitative studies, there are qualitative studies. But actually, I'd say the person who's best suited to answer that would be you, our product marketing manager.
I remember, was it a year and a half ago? Long time ago at this point. It seems like a long time ago.
Yes.
We sat down as a group and said, okay, we have this very interesting problem we're trying to solve, this new potential opportunity at this new price point, but we have no idea who these people are, what they want in a phone. Very different than potentially the people that we think about with the phones we had launched so far. And we went through a long process in terms of, Sherry, as you said, quantitative research, qualitative research, weighing all the trade-offs that we could fit into this product and make the best product possible for the people we thought that would buy this device. And we even spent some time in some markets really honing down, thinking about how do we take on this opportunity in specific places as well, not only just at a global level. I would say I think we've done a pretty good job really packaging up all of that into a pretty remarkable device, especially at this price point.
Absolutely.
So, but given how dependent all of that was on the software, Sherry, what do you think were some of the key challenges that your team faced in making this all happen?
Absolutely. So Pixel has become really well known for a camera. And when we started out with building Pixel 3a, that was probably our top priority. We wanted to bring that camera experience from Pixel 3 to Pixel 3a. And the reason we even had a shot at doing this, at bringing these magical experiences over, is because so many of our camera features are actually driven by software rather than hardware. And when you're in that kind of situation, that helps us with the price point, because normally other companies need to add additional hardware components for the camera, which drives up the cost. But for us to bring that software and get it to run on mid-tier hardware, that was actually a huge challenge and a huge technical hurdle for us to overcome. And the reason is that a lot of the features we're most well known for, night sight, top shot, portrait mode, all of those require computationally expensive machine learning models that require high-end processors to run. And for us, on Pixel 3, we even have a dedicated chip that sits on the phone called the Pixel Visual Core that handles all of this computationally expensive processing. And Pixel 3a doesn't have that, not even by a long stretch. The processing power between Pixel 3 and Pixel 3a is very different. And when we started out, a lot of these features just wouldn't even run. And for us, what I think is cool is that we approach the problem in a very Google kind of way. We lean into what we know best, which is software engineering. And we use software to bridge this very real gap in hardware processing power. And so what that looked like was re-engineering entire data pipelines to run, tuning performance, latency, managing thermals. And we're super proud of the fact today that we've been able to bring so many of these experiences over and overcome this technical hurdle. And what I think is really cool is that most of the time when we think about innovation in the mobile phone space, everyone thinks of it happening at that premium tier, those $1,000 plus smartphones. And for us, when we're working in this much more hardware-constrained environment, the technical innovation that it took, it really shows that there's a ton of innovation that can happen at this mid-tier level.
So it seems like we packed a lot into this phone. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. What are your favorite parts of the phone?
Oh God, for me, I would say night sight on the camera, Geo Air walking navigation, which just launched, and the battery. So I was just at a music festival up in wine country. I was the only one of my friends who would get that nighttime shot of the stage. I was actually traveling for work for Pixel 3a, going to a bunch of new cities, and Geo Air saved me. I'm directionally challenged. I hate trying to navigate with the blue dot to figure out where I'm meant to go, and getting those turn-by-turn directions right there in my phone, that was huge. And I'm also a big skier, so I spent a lot of time driving from San Francisco up to Tahoe. And as you know, location, maps, that drains a ton of power. And I think one big moment for me was the day that I drove all the way up to Tahoe, skied all day with location on so I could find my friends and we could find each other, drove all the way back and my battery was still running.
That's incredible. I think I'm going to tag along. Camera is super important to me as well. I have 2 little kids, and taking portrait mode shots of them is kind of like part of my life. And so that's one of the big features for me, is definitely that amazing camera and being able to capture all those great moments with the kids. But the feature that I think the response has been the funniest to has been the 3.5 millimeter jack, which is something we brought back with the Pixel 3a. What's fascinating about it was when Josh and I set out to kind of think around what's the hardware that we have to put in this product. This kind of bubbled up in the research that we did, and more research that we did around the consumer and their preference around audio consumption. This continued to kind of come up as a theme. And it was amazing to see how our management levels were like really comfortable with opening up that discussion, to go back and look at our product decisions and say, yes, for this consumer, this product change makes a lot of sense. So to me, that was a really cool experience, is just seeing how internally we were really willing to question our status quo and take a chance on making the right decision for this consumer.
Definitely. So what do you think surprised you the most about working on this product?
Oh, for me, absolutely the process of picking a name for the device. We went through 863 different names, all of which failed for various patent, legal reasons, or just being offensive in another language. And it was crazy. It got to the point where it was even holding up our production lines, because the name of the device is actually burned onto our custom security chip, and we didn't have a name, so we couldn't start production. And it's crazy that yeah, we're holding up the line because of that.
And so what does A stand for?
Awesome.
So what do you think is unique about working at Google?
If I reflect on my personal experience, to me what's been really amazing and remarkable at Google is this blameless culture, this really collaborative spirit that you find within the hardware teams, the software teams, the PMM team, our product management team. When things go wrong, which inevitably on all consumer electronic products, things go wrong, right? Whether it's in your supply chain, in the factory, the hardware design itself, bugs in the software, it inevitably something will go wrong. And what's awesome is how everybody jumps on the problem. And it's not about figuring out what caused the problem or who caused the problem, but how do we solve the problem? How do we get over this hurdle, move the program forward? That's the first thing that comes to everybody's mind, and you just feel super supported in an environment like that, where it's not about blaming one another, but more so, how do we work together and get over this hurdle? That's been kind of awesome for me.
For me, I'd say it is empowerment from leadership. I think there's so many places where it's very top down, and as a more junior person, I'm just there to execute orders. Whereas here, one of the most tangible things from the day I showed up was the fact that I really felt empowered to make decisions, that my leadership trusted me to own decisions, to make them, and to really back them up. And they were there to have my back as well, but really this was my own. And I think it was really cool also just to see this very unique bottoms-up culture. Google's a huge company now, but in many ways, good ideas are still coming from everywhere, and really at that bottoms-up kind of way. That's true to the original spirit of Google. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of a combination of both the things that you said. My gut response would be is just, obviously it's the two people standing here next to me and all the other Googlers I get to work with every single day. The amount of talent and incredible, just scope and breadth of people's work and all the things they take on and all the things they push all of the rest of their Googlers to do around them. I find that so inspiring every day to come in and be surrounded by that. But, on the same vein, work's not easy, right? I didn't come to Google to just work on easy things. I came to work at Google to work on very challenging projects, things that have never been seen before. And I feel like many of us can relate with that. Yes. And being surrounded with people that have that same hunger and have that same willingness to take all that on. I loved working on the program with both of you and all the other folks involved, because we would throw challenges back at each other and like, okay, how would you solve this? I've got a crazy idea. I don't know if this is going to work, but maybe you can figure out a way to make it work. And I think at the end of the day, we solved a lot of those really tricky, complicated, when you first ask them, you have no idea where it's going to lead kind of questions. So that's what made me really excited about working on this product, and hopefully you feel you can relate a little bit with that.
Hell yeah.
But what about working on hardware at Google has been different for you?
For me, so I've been on a couple teams at Google, and my previous team was Search, and Search is this big team. It's established. It's clearly the leader, and for me to move into hardware where this really scrappy underdog, kind of a team that's trying to build a business from scratch. 3 years ago, we were nothing, and now 3 years later, we're this major player that's really trying to push the game forward in terms of the mobile ecosystem. And I think it's super cool to see that hunger and that drive on the team. Watching Soniya fight for every cent on the BOM cost. There's so many teams at Google that are so divorced from the economics of the business, and just really seeing that, drive to build a business every single day. I think that's been super cool about working in hardware at Google.
Yeah, for me, I think it actually goes back to one of your responses earlier, which is the autonomy. And I think, we came up with this idea. We presented the business case for the idea of doing something a little different than what we had been doing with premium phones, and having the autonomy to go build that business case, present that business case, and then have that move forward. I don't know if that would have happened at some of the other organizations that I've worked at, because you don't have that same bottoms-up kind of culture that we have here at Google.
Yeah, interesting. So we're going to change gears a little bit. It looks like we have some live questions from people watching. Let's see what the first one says. All right. I don't have a name here, so whoever you are. In what Google offices do you have folks working on Pixel 3a?
Do you want to take it from the hardware side?
I can take it from the hardware side. So our primary hardware development centers for Pixel 3a were here in Mountain View, where we have what we call our Tech Eng group. And then our main engineering team that led the program was actually in Taiwan from a hardware perspective.
Yeah, on the software side, we have all these features coming from all different aspects of Google. We're really trying to showcase the best of Google on Pixel. And these teams are literally everywhere. You know, the assistant team is out of Zurich. A lot of our machine learning teams are out of Tel Aviv. It's in all different places. And so it is very global. And there is a lot of time zone gymnastics to figure out who's up when, have we kept someone up late by accident.
Lots of pings sometimes. Hey, can you help me with this? Yeah, on the marketing side, it's very similar. We have a very international team. Well, I think the thing with Pixel is you're working with so many other teams beyond just what we would consider the Pixel team, whether that's the Google Assistant or Google Photos or Lens or Maps, or I mean, you can imagine all the different pieces of software that go into these phones beyond just what we would consider the Pixel software. And so for us, we're always working with those teams to bring all of those features to life in the best way possible. And as well, we have users all around the world that we're trying to get these phones to, right? So whether that's here in the US, in Canada, in Europe, Asia, I mean, we have teams all over. So I very much sympathize with the, working with a global team. But I'm curious how, for you guys, kind of adding on, there was a second part of this question, with such a global team, how did you guys manage, staying so well connected and working together to bring all this together?
I'd say part of it is that within Google, it is almost expected that you will be working across time zones, across boundaries. So there already is that baseline where everyone's expecting to do this. That helps. I think some of it is putting processes in place to figure out when you need meetings, what are other ways to scale your documentation. And then there is an aspect where all roads kind of do lead to Mountain View at one point or another. So whether it's us leaving to visit other offices, or people generally will come through. And so we get that in-person time as well.
Yeah, I think that you hit it on right accurately, Sherry, because it was about finding what's the right process to work with those teams that are in different regions. So luckily on the hardware side, it was just 2 regions. I think you had a little bit more challenging, but for us, it was figuring out what kind of documentation could we put in place so that we could track what each team was doing, and so that we could do that handoff at the 12-hour mark, so that we could have a night shift and a day shift working basically on the program. It actually worked to our advantage, I think, in the end, because we were able to work a little bit more efficiently on some issues, right? When we did that handoff right, things actually happened quicker. Sometimes we didn't do it perfectly and things, got slowed down or got hindered, but I think it's something that we definitely worked on throughout the project and got really good at. And frankly, I ended up loving it because, your days ended up being a little freer, meant that I had a couple of evening meetings, but it's Google, and in this world, you have that flexibility of controlling your hours and when you were putting those hours in. And I thought that was, in the end, it worked out really well for me, frankly.
Yeah, and I really love working with all these different teams and all these different countries, because there's so much you can learn from them. And I know you both joined me on one of these research trips, and just being in the market, learning about how people use technology in so many different ways that I don't necessarily use in my day-to-day. I find it very incredible and very, very interesting. And after those trips, I always come back and think, how can I make this product the best for not only people here in the U.S. but all over the world? And I love that part of my job. So next question on the list here. So how do teams with different functions work together to create something like the Pixel 3a?
Oh.
Very broad.
Yeah, very broad.
That's a broad question.
But hopefully we have a variety of perspectives here, so maybe we can tackle that question.
I think it's, not to put too much pressure on us, but I feel like we're a little bit like the quarterback on the team, and we're pulling together some of those functions to at least provide a unified view. And so that's, I think, where things start. And like when we think about Pixel 3a, where it started with is like, what were we trying to accomplish? Going back to your very first question, like defining that becomes very important, because that's when you start to understand what functions do I need, right? If it wasn't a hardware product, we wouldn't need a hardware function. And so defining what you're trying to accomplish and how you think is the best path to accomplishing that. Is it a CM model, a JDM model? There's many ways of accomplishing a particular goal. So I feel like PMs kind of start that vision. From there, we then start pulling in the different functions that we need, pulling in Josh to help us understand who's the consumer, pulling in our hardware management leads to be like, how do we build this? Pulling in our software leads is, how can we port these algorithms over? Is this even possible? So we start pulling in the right leads and getting the right teams involved and incorporated into the process of building something so big.
One thing that I think is interesting from the software side of it, that is a unique challenge. Google's historically been a software company, and we're new to this whole hardware gig. And software works on a very different timeline and launch cycle compared to hardware. And really just trying to do the square peg, round hole, trying to get everyone to understand that there are these different constraints and these different timelines, and they're very hard. Yes. Extremely hard timelines. And that's something that's very new to a company that's been built around a culture of software. So I think that's been an extra challenge of getting the functions to understand this new kind of paradigm we're working with.
Definitely. And from my perspective, it's very much, working very closely with both of you and all of your teams to understand the product inside and out, understand how it's all coming together, because we know things are not, in the hardware world, not always a straight and narrow road, right? So we're working around all of those challenges. And then as you can imagine, we have teams all over the world making sure they understand the product and know how to talk about it and know who we're trying to make this phone for. And then working with all of our partners, carriers, retail partners, all sorts of teams involved with that. And then there's all the teams that make all of our marketing, all of our creative, everything you see from billboards to TV to actually in retail. So you can imagine there are a lot of people involved in this from start to finish. But it's like an orchestra, or a football team. You need the quarterback to help bring it all together. So nice segue from what Sherry was talking about. This next question: what does the launch cycle look like at Google?
Well, maybe I'll talk about our hardware development cycle, if that's okay first.
Apparently, the assistant likes a certain G word.
So the hardware development cycle is a pretty traditional cycle. So you go through a concepting phase, then you go through your engineering building phase. So that's where we're validating the hardware, the software, the reliability of the system, and then we go into our launch phase at a very high level. I'm not getting into all the nitty gritty, but we move into our go-to-market phase where Josh and his team really help take over. And at each phase, there's a different team that's really taking the forefront. So early on concepting, it's the product management team. In the middle, it's obviously the engineering teams and the engineering leads that are really managing the progression of the program, highlighting what's happening and where the issues might be creeping up. And then finally, at the end, it's our ops team and Josh's team that really take over to get the device over that finishing line and out to the market and into the consumer's hands.
Do you have anything to add on software?
Again, I think it is interesting. I think it really starts off with different teams have different roadmaps across camera, across maps, and it's kind of looking at what is possible within this time frame. There is that definition of those things that we absolutely would not launch without. And then there's this interesting in-between ground where you're seeing what kind of falls off the roadmap as things become technically infeasible or timeline infeasible or whatever that is. And then really building that story based on those things that we won't compromise on, plus those things that, like for example, Night Sight was something that has been a huge hit for us. And it kind of came as a bit of a last-minute surprise where they were able to take this research and productionize it and pull it over the finish line.
Okay. I have one last question before we wrap up. And I think it's my favorite, and I think you're two very well-equipped people to answer this question because I think you are a great example of this. So in the world of hardware at Google, maybe at Google more broadly, what sets a great product manager apart from a good one?
Ooh, I don't know, Sherry. You got some thoughts?
I was hoping you'd take it first.
That's a really tough question. think it's vision. And it's not something that you necessarily learn, but I think it's being able to see where the market is going and like being able to inspire the team to where you think things need to go. Like I'm going to go back to Pixel 3a. When we started it, no one believed in a mid-tier product. And it was through, I think, building a great story and being able to share that vision with the teams to get them excited about developing something that was a little different than the normal script. I think that that's important, and being able to do that and inspire teams to get passionate about a product. Because I think by the end of the product, people were super passionate about Pixel 3a, but it wasn't necessarily the case at the beginning.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think vision and also in the context of different parts of Google, because Google is this huge company with little companies and big companies all kind of within it, and being able to adapt to what the team and the product needs for that point in time.
Great. Well, that looks like that's all the questions for today. So thank you for submitting all of those. And be sure to check out the description box below for additional resources, and subscribe to Life at Google for more videos on working at Google. And with that, thanks for watching.
Bye.